Welcome to the Breaking In podcast. Today, I'm having a conversation with one of our investors, Nick. He's trying to break into a startup called CourtReserve. Now, Nick and our investment team, they've been trying to reach out to the founders of CourtReserve for 3 years with zero response. It's not new in VC, but that's why we have to try to break in. We're not giving up. Now, CourtReserve is transforming the way tennis and pickleball facilities operate. They're founded in 2016 by Tim and Ashley Owens, and they're both avid players, and they created a platform, an all-in-one solution for court operators for reservations, membership management, and event scheduling. Now, 1,600 clubs are on CourtReserve, and over 3.5 million players worldwide have been on their platform. Nick, he's undaunted. He's going to walk us through questions like, why would any VC want to invest in software for racket sports? What keeps CourtReserve on the top of his mind? Why does he want to break in? And what kind of scale do startups like CourtReserve need to achieve? So, Nick, you are undaunted for 3+ years. That's amazing.
Yes. So CourtReserve is a company that we've been tracking for quite some time, as you mentioned here. It's really driven by us continually seeing this business outperforming our expectations when we look at their web traffic from the outside in. As you touched on, from court reserving software, tennis court management software seems like a semi-boring company if you consider all the great AI innovations that are popping off right now.
Now, when people ask you, there's so many AI companies or different types of businesses to be looking at to invest in, people probably chuckle when they hear, oh, a racket sports company. I mean, that doesn't seem typically, investable by venture capital, but nevertheless, you are still interested in reaching out to Tim and Ashley. Why is that?
Apparently, there's 46 million individuals who have participated in pickleball this last year alone, and that's just in the US. So we're talking actually about 1 in 10 Americans plus of a target market here, or of a total addressable market. Naturally, there's tens, hundreds of thousands different courts across the US that these 46 million Americans had to have played on. And getting access to these courts to a large extent is still an antiquated experience. You actually have to go in many ways to the courts, phone the court operators to go get access to them. And there's nothing more frustrating than waking up in a given morning, wanting to play, trying to be, maybe a bit more spontaneous, and realizing that you can't get access, especially if you might have driven halfway across town to get access to a court and you realize it's booked. Now you have to wait for 20 minutes until someone else finishes up. It's a bad, clunky user experience. And just online scheduling, having an app to be able to just open up your smartphone of your local favorite court and being able to book one creates an incredible consumer experience. That is the basic bare bones, and obviously online payments for the court to manage all of these pieces in a single pane of glass, managing the operations are all kind of standard vertical SaaS features that we've seen being created for different industries over the last decade. The piece that gets me really excited in terms of talking about a venture scale opportunity here, not just a PE type exit here at $30-40 million of ARR, is really around the network effects that CourtReserve could potentially build. And when I talk about network effects here, I'm talking about the community aspect that I'm seeing being built in racket, and specifically this pickleball craze, is that people, I see this across the world. In my home city of Cape Town, South Africa, I have lots of friends who are part of a pickleball community. I see this across the US, where you have people that don't even know each other being part of pickleball tournaments and groups and are competing against strangers in this sport and create this community. And a central booking platform that has inventory across all the various courts across a city, a country, the globe, is in a prime position to actually own this community in the long term. And it's really about, as most marketplaces, being supply driven, having access to all these courts, that they could really own this community aspect.
So I'm going to pull up my screen. This is what we actually see in Searchlight. This is our internal CRM tool. And one of the features we have in this tool is what I call the homepage evolution, where we're going to see what CourtReserve looked like over the last 3+ years and how they evolve. So going back all the way to 2018, They were about reserving courts and manage your program. So I was like, okay, it's like court scheduling. And you're seeing, okay, where does AI come in here? There is like zero AI. It seemed like they're going for a court reservation platform for successful clubs. So were they always a sort of selling to the facilities, or were they trying to sell to the individuals? Seemed like always to the facility, right?
They still today focus exclusively on selling to the facilities. They are vertical SaaS tools for the facility. Everything I talked about in terms of these network effects is, I think, a big opportunity that they can go after by owning a large plethora of facilities. Today, they're working with 1,600 different clubs. And as they build this out, specifically in different local communities, they're building that opportunity of building the more community aspect of things, where the interesting piece to see when you look at the homepage evolution is how initially you didn't hear back until I think 2023, the word pickleball did not exist on their front page, right? It's really over the last called 18 months, 24 months, where pickleball has really hit the mainstream. You hear comedians making fun of it. You hear it talked about probably in your local social circles. That CourtReserve has kind of taken on that stigma, and really putting pickleball on their front page next to tennis.
I mean, tennis club have a certain view around like who goes there and whatnot, but you got pickleball a lot more democratic, a lot more fun, younger, older. I mean, it's just a better market overall, right?
Today, CourtReserve already has tournament and group features on a court operator basis, but you could easily see them expand this across their entire inventory of customers to drive this community aspect, making it incredibly hard to actually for anyone to displace them, to rip them out, because you have all of these consumers using the software, making it a very kind of compelling, potentially venture scale, almost like a consumer type business here in the long term.
So I have a confession. I am 1 in 10. I played pickleball this past year. My dad has been into pickleball since years ago, pre-COVID. And I see it. They just moved to Orlando, Florida just a few months ago. First place he goes to, the pickleball court. And there he meets this gentleman like from Brooklyn, New York. They hit it off and they're asking each other, hey, we should play sometime. I'm like, I just witnessed it. Like, he is brand new in the retirement community and they've already made friends playing pickleball. You're talking about a community. Like when we think about investing, you're like, well, the fact that the people gather like birds in a flock and they're tied to this idea of racket sports or pickleball. Therefore, there's something valuable, inherently valuable in that little flock of gathering. And that's why it's venture scale as opposed to any other gathering that you wouldn't find.
Absolutely. When you think about a traditional vertical SaaS business, you're providing software tools that enable a business operate their day-to-day, taking billing, scheduling, asset management. We see this across tons of different industries, and CourtReserve is doing that, and it's doing that really successfully. They're working with over 1,600 courts today. They have built a great business just doing that. Where if you actually own the end consumer and building this community aspect, it becomes really hard to actually rip out CourtReserve as a provider. Specifically in this day and age where building software, the barriers to building software are becoming lower and lower. You can talk about, Conrad, how AI is writing an increasing amount of our code here internally at Headline. And building a CourtReserve 2.0 is easier than ever in 2025, where if you actually have this community where people meet, communicate with each other, have their ranking, hold their pride, their social pride, that is something that you actually need to acquire these courts, acquire this community, build these networks of people interacting with each other. That is really hard. And that is why we see other social networks, take a Meta and the different platforms that they own, that have been around for close to 2 decades now and have not been replaced by any new incumbents. Given these social network effects, this community is really hard to replicate.
But I think the reality also is that pickleball is a place. It's like a third space where people come and meet. It's not just online. It's not just a Starbucks per se. So the community that's built there and it's on a regular cadence, there's sort of reinforcing elements of it that make it not like your typical digital like Etsy or other type of meeting place of like-minded individuals.
Absolutely. I think this is one of these opportunities that may seem boring, vertical SaaS, normal. We've seen this for for 15 years now. But if you actually double click, you have this opportunity to build this marketplace in the back end that could turn it into so much more, into a truly venture scale opportunity.
Have you looked at the demographics behind racquetball? I mean, is there a golf version? Is this like Top Golf? Is therefore that's the place you sort of invest in? Or is there something a little bit different about pickleball because it's more accessible? Like it's like ping pong, but you don't have to run as much. Therefore, more people can get involved and it's easier on your joints. It's just a lot easier to pick up compared to like a tennis or a golf.
The first thing is you need less space for pickleball than a traditional tennis court, despite it often being played on traditional tennis courts, given that that infrastructure exists. But we're seeing a lot of dedicated pickleball courts being opened up specifically within cities, urban areas where it's really where space is usually a lot more expensive. And you therefore have a lot of city folk that traditionally are younger, have more have a rather more disposable income than a lot of people in more rural areas, going and playing this sport, trying to meet people playing this sport. So you actually, specifically in the technology, community, is something that we're seeing. It's become a tradition at our headline offsites for the consumer team to play our SaaS team in pickleball every single time we meet up. So we're seeing this ourselves firsthand in kind of the younger, affluent individuals playing in that community, which is a fairly high value customer to own.
We've emailed them like half a dozen times in our emails, and I'll go through the signals, but they're growing. All right, they're hiring people. We have velocity. Every metric we're tracking on these guys is flying. They're still hiring on a consistent rate. I looked over some of their backgrounds. Some of them have been at this for like 13 years. The founders have been at this for 13 years. What's in their mindset as to why they wouldn't want to go venture scale? Is it because what kind of risks should they be thinking about as entrepreneurs? Is this therefore just a lifestyle business for them?
They probably have a different headspace than the average Silicon Valley founder. Again, they're working with 1,600 clubs. Their average ACV is about $300 to $500 per month. Call it $4,000 to $6,000 a year per club, per location, per facility. And so they're operating somewhere at over $6 million of ARR at this stage. They have less than 30 employees on LinkedIn.
Wow. Just off of 2 numbers and a screenshot.
When I then compare that with how many employees they have less than 30 on LinkedIn. They have 30 full-time employees. There may be some people that don't have LinkedIn. They have about $200,000 of ARR per employee. Given that they're not based in Silicon Valley, I imagine that the average employee at the company gets paid about $100,000 to $150,000 a year. This company is most likely operating profitably since its inception and has been able to grow at a really consistent and fast pace over time. When we look at their Searchlight traffic, over the last 5 years, this business, like clockwork, is just going up and to the right, which I imagine speaks for this business, consistently adding more new customers every month. There's, I imagine, really strong retention dynamics, and they're just stacking their customer cohorts and the ARR cohorts over time and build a really repeatable machine. And I imagine that the founders here are like, why should I change anything that is working? And why should I speak with these pesky venture capitalists when I'm already growing at our own pace at really exciting levels? Which, vice versa, those are exactly the companies that I definitely want to be speaking. These founders that have never actually really spent time with venture capitalists because they don't need their money. But the reason why I believe, Tim, you should be speaking to me nonetheless, is that I actually believe there's some outsized venture scale opportunities. A lot of the consumer community piece that we talked about earlier is something that I imagine raising additional capital against might make sense. Or even thinking outside of the box of that, I know that a lot of these courts are increasingly being aggregated by PE type players. And Tim here sits, and Ashley, they sit on top of the data of how these courts operate, how well are they being booked, how well are these courts run as businesses. They could even build a PE marketplace on the back end of this, enabling acquirers to figure out what are the best courts, creating a marketplace, transacting courts between each other, given that they have full insights into which courts should be acquired or not, which again, venture scale type of opportunity of building a kind of secondary marketplace for these acquisitions of courts, that it might make sense to raise venture dollars against.
I do encourage you to keep on going, keep trying. Again, this is breaking in. This is what it takes for investors to get into the best companies. A company like CourtReserve warrants it, like any company that you really want to break into. It has that level of effort.